Okay, so hi everyone. Good evening. My name is Danielle Pagani, and I am the Infectious Disease Preparedness Generalist for the Village of Ridgewood Health Department, and I'm also part of the Village of Ridgewood Stigma-Free Task Force. The task force was established in 2016 by Dawn Citrullo, Health Officer of the Village of Ridgewood, as well as Rosemary Klee, along with other community members. If you would like to be part of this task force, you can definitely contact the Ridgewood Health Department for more information. My number is 201-670-5500, extension 2312. We're always happy to have new members and new faces and new ideas. Tonight, we're very excited to have Mason Jenkins, who is a spiritual care supervisor for the Valley Hospital, and Sue Breithaupt, who is a licensed counselor, licensed clinical social worker, and a health educator at Valley's Community Health Department, presenting on COVID-19 and PTSD tonight. As mentioned on the flyer, you'll learn how to heal from the pandemic's emotional toll, as well as other great information is going to be shared. And before I turn it over to Sue and Mason, please note that tonight's presentation is going to be recorded, as well as be shared on our Village Facebook Stigma-Free, our Village of Ridgewood Stigma-Free page, as well as our Village of Ridgewood homepage. And of course, we'll share it with Sue and Mason. You could always contact the health department if you can't find it. Happy to share it with you all. To note, questions, comments, at the bottom of the screen, there's a Q&A and chat box. And for those that may be on their phone or may, prefer to ask, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you. It's totally up to you how you want to participate. Or if there's a question that comes to you after the presentation or you don't feel comfortable asking during, you could always reach out to us and we'll get that information to Sue and Mason. So that you have, your question answered. Besides that, I think, Sue, Mason, however, which one of you want to start?
Great. Thanks, Danielle.
Thank you, Danielle.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here with you. My name's Mason Jenkins, and we are going to talk to you about COVID-19 and PTSD, COVID-19 and trauma, basically like the emotional fallout of the last couple of years, how we can acknowledge what's going on for ourselves and how we can move forward in a way that's helpful. Just by way of introduction, I'm the supervisor of the spiritual care department at Valley Hospital. So my job is to try to meet the spiritual, emotional needs of patients and families in the hospital, but also to take care spiritually and emotionally of the staff of the hospital. And that's really where a lot of what we're talking about tonight comes out of. Over, the couple of years of the pandemic, Sue and I pivoted a lot of our work towards caring for staff who were taking care of really sick folks. It's just been a moving target for the last couple of years of what's the best way to support people, what is the message that they need to hear today, how can we best, make ourselves available to people who are really struggling. Do people just need something ridiculous to laugh at today, or do they need to talk about something really serious? So that's kind of the context of where we're coming from and the background we're bringing. Maybe Sue, want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Mason. Good evening. My name is Sue Breithaupt. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, as Danielle mentioned, and a health educator in Valley's Hospital Department of Community Health. And what we do is basically go out to whether it be schools or senior centers or different groups, and we provide health education. And my role is mainly to provide the mental health education. And as Mason said, we were on a resilience team. Mason, myself, a couple other of our colleagues, and we provided just support in many different ways, support groups, lectures, so many different. We had a site where there was a lot of different recorded programs that help people cope with things like trauma and sleep issues, insomnia, so many different things. So again, we learned a lot, so much from our staff members. And we want to share some of what got them through with you. All right, let me go to the next slide. All right.
So you don't have to be super clever to know that it's been a hard couple of years, right? And that things are different than they used to be. Life is considerably different. Things that we took for granted, we no longer take for granted. We know from a bunch of studies that are out there, but here we've cited a couple. The National Institute of Health, as of last September, said that there had been an increase in anxiety symptoms by nearly 42%, an increase in depression symptoms by nearly 37%. And we have found that here amongst the staff in the hospital, that the anxiety levels are high. We talk a lot about burnout. So the first step in improving on our situation is to acknowledge where we're at. And until we figure out exactly where we're coming from, what's going on with ourselves, we can't make steps to improve our situation, improve the situation of those around us. So just to right off the bat say that we've all struggled, that I've struggled, I know Sue has struggled, our colleagues have struggled, really intense mental health, emotional difficulties for like everyone that I know. And so when we talk about it, it's not like, oh, some people have struggled, some people have hard times. Like, we've been through the ringer, right? And it's not just because we're in healthcare, it's all over, everybody who's been faced with, taking care of kids, keeping grandparents safe, navigating how to be a responsible citizen in a world with changing rules every day. It's like crazy making. And I'm getting like heart racing just thinking about it, right? And so a lot of that is still with us, right? It hasn't just gone away because we're vaccinated and because the kids are back in school. There's a lot of tension, there's a lot of anger, and there's a lot of grief, and these are hard emotions. So just to put that on the table, that this is the soup that we're living in, and we all have, we don't want to be, dwelling in these difficult emotions all the time. Sometimes we got to look at, watch something funny on TV, do something to make us laugh and be light. But just to acknowledge, like, this is where we're at. Anger, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I had read somewhere that, of course there was a pandemic, but the emotional aftermath is the other pandemic. And again, like Mason just explained, there's, we don't want to dwell on it, but there's a lot of people that don't even realize what's going on with them. I always say, if you don't deal with your feelings, they sort of deal with you. And there's been a lot of subtle behaviors that have indicated that people are really struggling. I don't know, maybe somebody's been driving on Route 17 lately and has experienced some kind of road rage. Just being anywhere, we see all these different things on social media about people on the planes losing their tempers and, causing so many scenes. Some of the other common issues have been that, there's been a lot of people that have increased their feelings of hypochondria, being being like hypochondriacs, the anxiety over getting ill. How many people, they start to get a sniffle and it scares them, especially if they're more vulnerable and have other illnesses or they're worried about their loved one. Some people experience just sort of out of the blue an overwhelming feeling of sadness. Again, Mason had mentioned the grief. These are real feelings and these are real situations. Fear, more people, like we mentioned before, are more anxious. Fear, generalized fear. And of course, like I mentioned, a lot of anger. I know even at the hospital, we struggled a lot of times with our, yes, with our staff, but with visitors, patients, just more impatient than they were, than they had been previously. A lot of guilt, and, people are experiencing, some people have talked about, worrying about infecting others, or that they felt they had gotten other people sick. Social isolation. Now we're not in quarantine anymore for the most part. However, that experience of being socially isolated impacted many people, especially our elderly, our seniors. See a lot of them struggling, continuously, with that impact of being socially isolated. For a lot of people, it affected their memories, and we're still hesitant to get out there. There's a lot of people that are still isolating. Some people say they like it, but it's never really a good thing, as we'll talk about. Insomnia, I don't know, Mason, I'd say that was probably the most prevalent symptom that our staff spoke about, was having a lot of difficulty with getting to sleep, staying to sleep, or just waking up very early and not being able to sleep anymore. Just having a lot of difficulty with racing thoughts, avoiding memories of the illness. This is interesting. I talked to a nurse the other day in the hospital, and she had said the last couple of years, when the weather got nicer, because remember, the pandemic started really in the spring, when we saw a lot of the serious cases. So last year and the year before, this woman said, when the weather got warmer, it brought back memories of when this all started. So memories of the illness, of their loved ones being sick, your own illness, flashbacks, even nightmares. People still talk a little bit about, especially the flashbacks, to be on a certain unit at the hospital, for instance. We'll talk about, our staff, and they'll recall some of the really difficult situations they went through. And then other people are have an increased fear of dying. It's really, they were very, faced with their own mortality, the mortality of their loved ones. I will share that my own husband was very, very ill, and it still scares me a little bit. It stays with me. Even though I'm functioning, and we just were out in Broadway the other day. We're moving, but it's there. It's subtle. We're going to talk a little bit as we, parlay into just talking about trauma, and a lot of things I just mentioned are symptoms or associated with trauma. And trauma is kind of an emotional response to distressing experience. And what a lot of us are experiencing regarding COVID is sort of a chronic trauma. This is a prolonged situation. This has been going on almost 3 years. First cases we heard about were 3 years right about now overseas. And it's coming up on the 3rd year when we basically shut down in our community and all over the world, in our country, in our area. So again, some of the symptoms of trauma, that just think of, somebody you care about. Think of your own self. Are you more irritable? You're walking through the, forget about road rage. How about walk rage when you're at ShopRite? Just feeling just more irritated, more, your husband's getting on your nerves more. Things that didn't bother you are, there's a lot of, this is something that, I experienced this summer, sort of a numbness, or an inability to experience pleasures, things you usually used to like, and you're just not feeling it anymore. But even just a numbness, just a shut down, it's very normal. Talked about nightmares and flashbacks. Again, just remembering this time of year, 3 years ago, where were you? What was it like going into a supermarket and not, finding things that you needed? Other things as a result of trauma, difficulty focusing, even memory problems. A lot of our seniors, I spoke a moment ago about the isolation. So many people, especially in facilities, experienced, and there was many people who, their memories really, they really struggled with their memory, and those who didn't even have a memory problem developed one. So being jumpy, easily startled, that's something that can be a result of trauma. Increase in even negative beliefs about yourself and the world. And again, it wasn't only the pandemic. There was a few things that happened over the last few years, and there are people who feel a little differently about, you hear a lot, oh, the world today. It wasn't like this years ago. It's been a lot of that commentary. And the news and the media doesn't help. We're so, there's so much out there that the media is everywhere. We're constantly hearing these things. On guilt and shame, I mentioned that before, maybe guilt about infecting someone. I've talked to people that felt guilt that they even survived. Or that they couldn't, our healthcare workers talked about, sort of guilt around that they couldn't save more people, especially at the beginning. It's really hard. And again, going along with numbness, feeling detached from people. And Mason's going to talk a little bit about this, even physical issues as a result of trauma. This is big, right, Mason?
Yeah, trauma is one of these terms that can be stigmatized a little bit, that we think of, you have to have been through, at the World Trade Center or have seen someone die right in front of you to experience trauma. But we'd like you to think of it a little bit more day to day, in that the way Sue says, it's an emotional response to a distressing experience. And the last couple of years have been distressing. And the way that that gets processed for a lot of us is through our bodies. We're talking about a lot of hard stuff. So you're thinking about grief and sadness and anger, like those are not comfortable feelings, right? So a lot of us will find ways to push those feelings down. And when we push them down enough, what happens is that they come up through our bodies, that our bodies let us know that something is not right. I'll have a pain here, a pain there. Something just doesn't feel right. Our breathing will be shallow. Our posture will be hunched. Our bodies will carry the stuff that we've been through. So it's not magic or rocket science. It's just that we discount the experience of our bodies living in this world. And that if we can acknowledge what's going on for our bodies physically, sometimes that will be a good first step to dealing with some emotions, which can be really threatening or really difficult.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk a little healing, right? We've talked a lot about the symptoms, what's been going on, how challenging this is. So what can we do about it? And the reason we point out these things and kind of emphasize them is because we need to be aware of what's even going on if we really want to heal, right? Can't solve a problem unless you know what it is. And same thing is true of any type of healing. We have to know and just take in and be aware of the struggle that maybe we are still struggling with COVID and all the things that have happened over the past 3 years. Maybe we need to tap into those feelings and those issues. And at that point, the second most important thing we can do is accept that that's where we're at. I was just working with an older gentleman. Well, I was at a group and I was speaking, and this guy came up to me and he goes, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, I can't seem to, he, first of all, he had COVID and he doesn't feel as well. And then also he's been really, really struggling emotionally since, very down. And I think so much of what we were talking about at that point was, I said to him, I said, you just need to accept where you're at. It's okay. It's allowed. This is huge. This has been really difficult. And I think that's so true of ourselves too, to accept where we're at. This has been hard. We need to this is what our bodies are experiencing, our emotion life and mental health has been affected. And then we can take action. Then it can be like, okay, what can we do to manage this? But these first two things of awareness, acceptance, really need to, they need to be managed first. So those are the 3 A's. Okay.
Before you go on to,
Yeah, go ahead.
will you go back to the previous slide? I'm aware that we've been, the first several slides, it's kind of a litany of hardships, right? And so that's this awareness piece. And it's hard to even going through it with with the slides that we just laid out that Sue went through. It feels heavy, and it's our intention being with you guys today to bring a spirit of gentleness and to acknowledge what the background is, what's going on, but then to help us make this shift to how we can think differently about what's going on in our lives, and to not be mired or caught in that past, in that trauma. So this is kind of like the hinge point in our talk, where it's like we've seen what we've been through. It's still living with us. It's still living in our bodies. This is that awareness. And so now we want to talk about how we can accept that. We can come to terms and see what's really going on around us, and then thereby take some action to improve our situation.
So how do we do that? Here we go.
Well, for one, it's to face the feelings that we're having, right? I keep saying that some of this stuff is so difficult, and I keep thinking about my 10-year-old daughter. She's always been really successful. Her older brother has struggled a lot in school and stuff, but she's always been like really on point. And just this year she's in 5th grade now, and this year has been really tough for her. It's like she's got all these emotions that are just like really strong, and she just does not know what to do with them. And I wish she would just be able to, like, it just comes out in anger and yelling at us, and it's like it's all over the place. And her mother and I are like, we try as we might. We want to support you, and we want to care for you, but when you're like this and when you're all over the place, we can't help you until you've started to acknowledge what's going on and face what you're up against, right? And so validating what we've been through. God, we have all been through this. And the thing with stigma free too is that, like, there is a lot of stigma around accepting that it's a struggle to be in the world, that even before the pandemic, mental health in our community was not great, right? The stigma free sure started before the pandemic. And it's hard to access the resources we might need to get mental health support. It's hard to accept that we have something going on where we might need support. Our culture tells us that we should be independent, and we should be cowboys, and we should be, out there doing our thing and being productive. And, it's hard to acknowledge that we need other people. But that is the fact of our existence, and that is what the last couple of years have really brought home to us. So one of the ways to do this is just to literally sit with your difficulties and your feelings as they arise. We have so many mechanisms. The phone in particular is like, the number one mechanism for like, okay, I've wired my brain that when I have a difficult emotion come up, I'm going to pull out the New York Times game app and I'm going to work on the spelling bee, even though I've been staring at these same 7 letters for like a half an hour already. And there's no way I'm going to get any more letters, but like, it's something to distract me. Right. And, that has a purpose and a time, but if it serves to keep us from facing what's really going on with us, it's not serving us, and it's going to cause more difficulty for us. And with kids and the way that our kids interact with their devices too, I see it with my kids. They come home from a long day and they want to grab that device like right away. And it's like, it's like a sedative to like the anxiousness going on. And I don't think we're better off after we get off that device typically than we were previously. So if we can sit without doing something, it's doing nothing and just noticing what comes up. Maybe listening to music. Music, I find, for me, really helps me connect to emotions and connect to my body. But if we can sit and just notice what comes up and not have a distraction happening, not have our phone within reach, it doesn't have to be some like deep Buddhist meditation. It can just be sitting still without a distraction. And what might come up is memories or sadness. I've been feeling like this sadness the past couple of days, and this like just feeling it adrift, and like being able to talk to somebody about stuff like that when it comes up. It's really important to be like gentle with ourselves and to acknowledge that we're not perfect and we're going to have hardship in our life. And it tends to be outside of our comfort zone to be recognizing these difficult emotions. I'm kind of an introvert, so it's sort of in my wheelhouse to want to look within myself and see you know, what's going on with me? Why am I having difficulty lately? Why is it harder for me to connect with my wife or my kids? What's going on? Um, but maybe you're not into sitting and like thinking and reflecting. I would also tell you like some kind of physical practice if you're running or if you're riding a bike or if you're swimming. Those are the three things I like to do. But there's lots of other things. You could do yoga, you could, do push-ups, whatever it is that engages your body. That's the one thing that our devices really don't do is they don't engage our body. They engage like this level here, and so they distract us here, but they really don't do anything to soothe the anxiousness that's going on in our body. So if we can put that aside and figure out some way to engage our body, there's a lot of wisdom in our bodies. We tend to think that to know something, to be wise and to be smart about something, it's all up here, but there's a ton of wisdom that's in our bodies. And if we can be quiet and be still or be in movement, doing whatever we can to connect with what's going on in our bodies will typically help us. They will sort of reveal what's going on in a way that helps us to know where to go with it. And by that, I mean that, I don't know. I don't want to get all like hippie on you, but like you move your body around and you
Yeah.
feel where it's bothering you, and then you feel what feels good when you move your body around. I like to dance, whatever it is that helps your body to feel alive, to feel engaged in the world. One thing we've been missing is, our bodies feel the difference when we're in space with other bodies. It's not the same. This is a good way, what we're doing right now, to exchange some information. There's an emotional connection we can make through the computer too. But as far as our bodies feeling, there's like a tribal instinct in our bodies when we get together. And Sue's going to talk a little bit more about that later. That is really important for us to be together with other people and to be listening to what's going on in our bodies.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I just want to say, first of all, it's a skill to sit with that discomfort, by the way. It is truly a skill. Think about, you get a phone call, maybe it's somebody you don't like, you have a bad, exchange. It is a skill to sit with that and think of it like a wave. It comes in and it goes out, but only if you really just acknowledge it, right? Having said that, what Mason is talking about, we were talking about trauma affecting the body so much. It is so true. They talk about these, what they call bottom up therapies, right? Which is basically, like we were just saying, talking therapy is really helpful. But right now, think about the popularity of yoga. At our gym, we are packed to the hilt, and we thought that I work at the gym up in Mawa, and we were really, we were prepared for people to take classes like, weight classes and bodybuilding classes. And the most popular class at the gym is yoga. And that's exactly because of what Mason is talking about, just really trying to heal in that way. Okay. So I want to say I'm in the dark, and I'm going to tell you why a light just went out my room here, but I will, as soon as Mason started talking, I'll run. Sorry. So the next thing we can do is just to shift the way we think about things. It sounds very simplistic, and it's not just like put on a happy face and, just think positively. It really is. This is also quite a skill to identify problematic thinking, right? So again, we can, just going to be a quick example. The pandemic, we're never going to be the same. This is terrible. And these are tough years, and it's not going to be change anytime soon. And of course, that is a problematic thought, as you can imagine, right? So the first thing is, it's important just to observe that thought and accept it. Yeah, that's a thought that we can think. However, just pause, you take a deep breath, and let's try to shift that a little bit. Okay, but we've learned a lot from the pandemic, right? We've learned about the importance of connection. Maybe we think about our health in a different way now, right? Started going to the doctor. We connected more with people maybe we haven't talked to in a long time via technological, social media platforms. We can think of things in different ways, even about how we think about ourselves. You get up in the morning and think, oh gosh, I haven't been myself lately. I'm feeling really down on myself. What's wrong with me? How about, okay, I accept that thought. but what have I done well? What have I done well? You know, so just this subtle shift in our thinking is extremely powerful and can change everything. Whether you think you're right or wrong, you're wrong, you are correct. You know, it's just how we think about things. Okay. Go ahead, Mason. I'm going to run over to the link.
Yeah, so talking about flexibility, I'd also call it gentleness or ease with ourselves and the ability to, you know, expect one thing and then find that we're not necessarily meeting that expectation. Uh, a lot of suffering in our lives comes from expecting things to be one way, and then when they don't end up that way, we struggle to get them to be that way, that they should have been the way we expected them to be. um, I feel that way about parenting a lot. I'm like, gosh, this is not what I expected. And it's, you know, my kids are, you know, they're tweens now, so I've had some time to get used to them not being at all, it not being at all how I imagined parenting to be. Uh, but you know, over the last couple of years, of course, with the pandemic and things changing every week, every month, we had to have a lot of flexibility there. But now there's a lot of momentum to like return to life, like just like it was before, and to be super productive. And now that we can be back at it, we've got to be, you know, going hard and going fast. And um, I can tell you from my own experience and from the experience of other folks here at the hospital that the energy to charge back ahead the way we were before the pandemic is just not there. And one of the positive things that came out of it is that it allowed us to pull back from the pace of our lives and to reevaluate what was really important to us. And so now, as things are all charged up and we're going and going, uh, there's an allure to it. There's like you want it to be the way it was before. There's a time in the past that you're like wanting it to be like, but I'm telling you, we have to rethink the energy that we spend on our lives. We can't be racing all over the place to try and solve a problem that we really need to face by sitting still and allowing some emotions to come up. You know, one of the things that I think a lot of people did during the pandemic was drink, right? We're home by ourselves. There's hard stuff going out in the world, and I'm going to drink to help me cope with the difficult emotions and with all the uncertainty of it. And, you know, that is one way to not face the emotions that, you know, or if things haven't gone our way. I just think about like the old television programs and some new television programs too. Like when somebody gets some bad news, they're like racing around the room for the bottle. Then they're coming and they're like pouring the liquor and the drink, you know, and it's like this image of like, this is what you do when you get bad news, or this is how you manage difficult emotions. And it doesn't end up being a very good long-term solution to you know, and I think coming out of the pandemic, there's been a resurgence of sobriety and sober curious. And that's one way that we can be gentle with ourselves, is to not be so aggressively avoiding our feelings through substances or through devices, but instead, you know, face our day to day with a little bit more ease, a little bit more flexibility.
And I think it's so true. It's like the last slide talking about our thinking changes. Yeah, something else that came out of the pandemic, just what Mason said, is how are we coping? You know, are we eating or drinking too much? And maybe there's a time to shift that, you know, related to health. So again, it's how we think about it, right? That's not the worst thing in the world. I'm going to talk a little bit about another means to kind of healing ourselves, and that is through connection. I put the word, it's actually pronounced hug. It's a Danish word, a Danish concept. I say hygge, but really it's just, it's the idea of connection. And I you know, brought this slide up and this word up because, you know, Denmark and a lot of the Scandinavian countries, the people are very happy. Some of the happiest countries collectively in the world. And think about, my gosh, it's always cold there. They don't get as much sunlight, at least not for many, many months as other, southern countries do. And I just think that when they talk about is one of the reasons for this is because they really depend upon community and connection as a means of coping and functioning. And just human interaction has become, as we know, we value it a lot more. Maybe some of us do since the pandemic. We weren't able to get together and it was very difficult. And we found creative ways to do so, whether it be through a social media platform like Zoom, FaceTime, or whatever. Or, I even heard about people who lived in like apartment complexes and, they would kind of get out on their balconies and yell to each other, or, chat a little bit more. Or think about in the summer of 2020, spring and summer, how it was like the 1970s all over again. People were sitting outside in their driveways, talking to each other. So the connection, the desire for connection is very strong, and it is a way to heal. And also one of the things connected to this word and this idea is just really appreciating simple pleasures, like sitting outside around a fire, maybe not in the snow, but these simple pleasures. Again, we found that again during COVID, that these things were not to be taken for granted. They were very healing, forced us to slow down, and hopefully we can continue with that. And it's just very important for healing is just to get together. I often tell people, especially when I work with older people, isolating causes so many problems with memory, health problems, just in so many ways. And I'll hear from older people, well, I'm not a joiner. I'm not, that's not the way I am. But I'll tell people, even just by osmosis, just by that energy of being around other people, you can really, you can experience a lot of benefits, and it's really important. So connection is something that, if you're not doing that, you're not feeling great, you may want to think about that. So Mason.
So thinking about connection, one of the things that came out of the pandemic, as far as what people realized was really important to them, is the relationships we have with people in our lives, right? And that when everything else was said and done, it really felt like that's what stood out for a lot of people, that those relationships are important. But it's not always easy to be around other people. And in the same way that we have our own ways of pushing down difficult emotions, other people have their own way of pushing down or acting out difficult emotions. And, the political climate, there's a lot of different elements to this piece. And the thing, it's easy to say, but I would really encourage empathy on all of our parts, right? To know that in the same way that I might be struggling or that I might have a hardship in my life, it's likely that those around me are also struggling or also might have hardships in their lives. When we say avoid hot topics here in this second bullet, I think the other way I would say that is to find what you have in common with people, right? Like, we don't have to be talking about politics or whatever. What is it that you feel like a kinship with somebody about? We can form relationships upon, we tend to think about ourselves in contrast to other people and the way other people are, and think about how we're different from them and how we might judge them. But I encourage you to think about, there's more ways that we're similar to each other than there are different. And, people are, I keep saying this, but people are struggling, right? And so when we're out there in the world and somebody's driving like a jerk or somebody's being rude in the grocery store, it's easy to have that sort of like indignant feeling of, how dare you, and, that could be me on any other day, right? And I don't have to step in and fix that person. that's the feeling of wanting to judge them or be indignant about their behavior. It's just another way of pushing down difficult emotions, right? Because we all feel anger at times. We all feel, um, things that we don't want to look at. And so if we're like, oh, that guy over there, he's the angry one. It's like, well, actually, I've got some anger in me too. And it's hard to look at. Um, so yeah, what else about this, Sue?
Well, I love what you just said, because one of the ways to think about this, remember I was saying thinking changes thing, is to remember that hurt people hurt people, right? Yeah, some people are just nasty, but most of the times the people who are struggling, and we term challenging, like Mason's saying, or the challenging people, they're struggling. And I think that's helpful in terms of thinking about how to shift that a little bit, how to maybe be more patient. And I just think that most people just want to be heard. Most people just want to be heard. We found that in terms of customer service at the hospital. If you just listened, a lot of times that anger wave kind of dissipated, so, and you just want to know at this point, especially if you're feeling more vulnerable, who can you be with, and maybe who is not too healthy for you right now to be with. Just think of it that way. Sometimes there's no avoiding that, but other times when you're feeling vulnerable, you want to be around as healthy people as possible. Let's put it that way. Gently putting it that way. I just wanted to kind of encourage this, because we have found, and I found in my practice, I've been doing this for many years, journaling has been very helpful. It is in general, and definitely during this time. I've worked with some people who actually journal to the point where they didn't write a book, but they wrote stories about their experiences during COVID, just dedicated whole journals to what they went through. So I think it can be helpful. It's a great way to vent. I know sometimes there's those pressured thoughts, maybe when we're sleeping, when do they all come up, right? We're trying to get to sleep, and there's pressured thoughts, thinking about everything you have to do the next day, or someone who's wronged you, or whatever that is. But if you kind of journal all those things and write them down, it can really be very helpful. It can be creative too, which is always a good thing. And it can be a good way just to keep track of, how far you've come. You can look back a few pages or a few months and say, oh, doing better than I was, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about gratitude, because that's important too. Some other things I want to just mention before we get into a couple other things is, what do you like to do? Do that. Right? We talked a little bit, Mason talked before about, all those feelings we stuff in, all that trauma we stuff down there. And we want to make sure that we express those things. And exercise, right? What does your doctor tell you to do all the time? Exercise, movement, and make sure you're doing an exercise you enjoy. Maybe it's dance or yoga or something like that. But make sure that, you're doing something you enjoy. I think the movement is so very important right now. Talk about meditation and yoga. Not everybody's so inclined, but I will tell you that I have a yoga support group. I have a COVID support group, and two people in the group said that they began meditating, and they're not that type of person, but they started doing a mindfulness-based meditation. Helped them tremendously, just to get still for 10 minutes a day, do some breathing, focus on just the breathing, or just a beautiful scene in their minds. It helped them tremendously relax, calm down, change the way their brains, work. And just, remember too, that if you need extra support to manage these issues, whatever issues they are, related to COVID, related to whatever's gone on the last few years, whether it be trauma or just plain old anxiety or stress, there's extra support, and that's okay. So what? As one of my nurse friends says, so what that maybe you need to go talk to your rabbi, your pastor, maybe you go, do some pastoral counseling. Maybe you go to a counselor. Who cares? It's almost vogue now. There's support groups out there. It's not a big deal. You can start with your physician as well. Mental health, emotional health is health. If anything, I hope that's what we can take away from these difficult situations. So I just wanted to say that and kind of skip into another slide. Mason, you want to speak to this a little bit, or caring for ourselves, using self-compassion? I know Mason and I were talking about this early. Remember, if we don't take care of ourselves, we really can't take care of others very well, including our children. That's that example that we hear so often, about being on an airplane, and when the stewards and stewardesses talk about, God forbid there's a crash and the oxygen mask comes down, what do they say? You don't put that oxygen mask on the person you're taking care of, whether it be your child or an elderly loved one, because what? You got to put it on yourself first so you can take care of that person. It's the same true as, if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't be there for others. Make sure that we put ourselves first. You think about how you talk to your child. Gentle parenting has become very popular. It's wonderful. Let's gently parent ourselves, especially as we think about what we've been through these last years. We share a common humanity, and remind yourself that everyone is vulnerable and imperfect, including ourselves. We want to be kind to ourselves. So one of our last really effective ways to take care of ourselves is to practice gratitude. Mason's going to speak to this.
Yeah, so it's really a perspective on what's going on around you, whether you feel gratitude for the things that are around you or you don't feel gratitude. And the thing that I've been talking a lot about, and every time we talk with folks here at the hospital, we teach about resilience. I've been talking about this practice called the 3 good things, which is basically that at the end of each day, you take note of 3 good things that that happened that day, 3 things that you're grateful for. The science behind this is that when we experience something in our lives that's threatening or feels like it's dangerous to us, our body releases all these chemicals and sends out all these signals so that we will remember that dangerous and threatening thing. And so those chemicals over the last couple of years have been going bonkers, right? So every time you touch a doorknob that somebody else you just saw somebody touch and they happen to wipe their nose, and you're like, you have these literal, these feelings that are designed to protect you. It's like it's part of our biology that's designed to help us identify danger. But over the course of time, it's not meant to be sustained. It's a short-term solution to a dangerous stimulus. So if we can take note of things that are good at the end of each day, it helps us to lift up those positive things that happen each day, because they don't have the same sort of biological imperative to remain in our brain. So we have to be conscientious about lifting them up, about thinking to ourselves, oh, the example I often give is I'll have a great day with my kids. We'll be out doing some activity, enjoying each other. And then on the way home, there's some blow up fight in the car. And then everybody's screaming at each other by the time we get inside, right? And then I lay my head down at night. And what do I think about? I think about, oh man, that stupid fight. That's what's staying with me, right? And if we can instead think back to the whole day and say, well, yeah, there was a stupid fight and that was very unpleasant. But what about this and this, and oh, I had some part in the goodness that preceded all of that. It takes some conscientious effort and some intention to do that, because that negative stuff is powerful and it has ways of sort of ingraining itself in our brain. And so at the end of each day, you're lying down in bed, you're sitting quietly, you just take note of 3 good things that happened that day. And it lifts up those positive things from your day. And what you do is you ruminate on the positive emotion that's associated with those things, because then the same chemicals that were happening when the event was happening are once again released into your body. And then your body remembers those chemicals. And then when the positive things happen the following day, you're going to be more attuned to them. You're going to pick up on them more. They're going to take up more space in your brain. And then that negative stuff, that threatening stuff, will take up less space. It's a real practice, but there's a bunch of science behind it, actually. Where they researched, they studied specifically healthcare workers doing this practice just for 2 weeks, brought down levels of depression, brought down levels of anxiety, increased feelings of well-being, and not just for the 2 weeks that they did the practice, but up to 6 months and a year afterwards, there were still beneficial effects on par with antidepressant medication. So there's actually a good body of scientific evidence that shows we have this ability, if we can focus on positive things, to rewire our brain, to really have an impact on our perspective. And this is really big because with the pandemic, with the political climate as it is, with, you know, whatever's going on in the world, social media feels like this great big force of resting on us. It feels like we don't have that much power over our lives. It can tend to make us feel powerless. And the fact of the matter is that the state of our inner being, of our consciousness, like we have so much power, so much ability to impact the way we perceive the world, the way we are in the world, that this is really, you know, it's really something. And Sue, your lights went out again.
Oh my gosh. Look at me. So do you want to, so now that I'm so cozy in the dark here, you want to just kind of close with a nice meditation and just take a nice deep breath together?
Yeah, so on that note, focusing on, you know, positive emotion, focusing on being still and just being with our bodies and what comes up for us. I would love to, as a way of closing, just walk you through a brief breathing meditation. As you're comfortable, I would just invite you to close your eyes if you feel safe, you're not driving, sit up straight, put your feet flat upon the floor, put your hands someplace kind of balanced, maybe on your knees or folded in your lap. And just take a couple of nice deep breaths. Breathing in. Hold. Breathing out. So as you continue to keep breathing, keep focusing on your breath, I just invite you to acknowledge one thing that's been hard for you recently. Just take note of how that feels in your body. And then just put forth some gentle energy towards that emotion. So feeling of gentleness and compassion for yourself and what you're going through. And knowing that that difficult thing is there, it's with us, it's in your body. I next invite you to think of something that's going really well in your life, something that's just unequivocally positive, something that has a really pleasant emotion associated with it. So I invite you to just lift up that thing in your consciousness, to feel what that positive thing feels like in your heart. And when you breathe in and breathe out, just feel that positive emotion spreading throughout your body. And just sit with that, see what that feels like. And know that it's within your power to amplify those positive emotions, to ruminate upon them, to help them to be bigger in your life, in your consciousness. And in so doing, you improve your life. You improve the lives of those around you. It's got a beneficial contagion to it. Let me take just a couple more deep breaths in and out. Once more, in and out. All right, you can open your eyes. We're so appreciative for you guys spending your time with us and for Danielle inviting us to be here. This has been really nice. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everyone. It was really nice to be with you. Thank you, Danielle.
Well, thank you. I want to thank you both, for your, I know this is a these are heavy topics. It's not, the most comfortable for individuals, even myself, it's just, this is like you said, I think, the society that we're in, the culture that we're in, stigma attached to this. But I loved how you said mental health is health. And I think that that's really important. And, the information that you both shared tonight, and I love, closing with that exercise is really great. And we, on behalf of, the health department, definitely appreciate you both for putting together such a well thought out, detailed, presentation. And, I'm so glad that, you both are in, our community, and yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I did notice one participant has had their hand raised. So, Maureen, I'm gonna unmute you so you could talk. Oh, maybe, nope, never mind. It was unraised. But if, of course, anyone, if you have any questions or you just want to place a comment in the chat box, I'll give you a moment to do so. If anything else comes up, you could always call us, email us. I have Sue's information's on the flyer, but
Yeah.
can always get them to you both. If any questions don't come out of the chat. Oh, there is one. Okay, sorry. Oh, no worries, Maureen. She just said that she had her hand raised in the beginning. Now I forgot. Well, if it comes to you, Maureen,
You can always email us.
yeah. I have my email in the chat and my phone number, the 201-670-5500, extension 2312 is my work line. So Maureen, if that comes to you, and again, Sue's email is on the flyer if you prefer to just direct it to Sue. I did want to mention, if you don't mind, Sue, can you just share your screen so I could pull up the slide that I have?
Sorry about that. Okay.
Oh, no, you're fine. Oh,
Good?
and another
Okay.
question came in, I think. Where is it? Oh, Maureen said this changed her day.
Oh, go ahead, Maureen.
Aw. I love that, Maureen.
Thank
you
you.
for sharing
It's
that.
such a nice thing to say.
I am just gonna
Oh, good.
make this a little bigger. One sec. Slideshow. Beginning. Okay, so can you all see this slide that I'm putting up? Okay, so basically this is a quick synopsis of the health department with our mission, but also for those that may need, whether it be information regarding resources, like we can, when you said, so Sue, actually a question for you, the support groups, if you share that information, what is the COVID support groups? What does that look like?
Oh, well, we have one at the hospitals for people actually who were just affected by COVID. The people in the group right now, there's several, they've had COVID, some have had long-term COVID, and we just sort of share just, where they've been a little bit, and also, how to move forward from that frustration of still not quite feeling like themselves, or just how they were impacted. And we meet every week at this time, at this point, I should say, at 1 p.m. on Thursdays. And you can certainly contact me if you have any interest in that. Again, we've opened it up to even anybody who's been impacted, not just physically, but emotionally. Happy to share.
Perfect. Thank you, Sue.
Of course.
So at the health department, we would definitely connect to then residents, anybody that calls us, then we always refer people to, services like that. So if you or someone needs information, whether it be for something like this, or maybe it's, they're looking for vaccines or testing sites, or, other assistance, don't hesitate to reach out to your local health department. Or if you are a Ridgewood resident, don't you could always reach out to us. So our information is here. And as mentioned, tonight's presentation will be posted on our Village of Ridgewood Facebook page, as well as our Village of Ridgewood website, which is the www.ridgewoodnj.net. I just want to thank Sue and Mason again for, tonight's wonderful presentation. It definitely, it hits home for all of us, I'm sure, but definitely personally hit me. So thank you.
Yeah, thank
And I
you.
did want to mention, since we kind of talked about the mental health aspect of it all, let's not forget about the physical, because we are seeing a rise in, respiratory illnesses. It's COVID, it's influenza, it's RSV, and other seasonal viruses. So we do encourage everyone to stay up to date with vaccines and boosters, stay home if you're sick, or and contact your healthcare provider. Avoid contact with people who are sick, wash or sanitize hands frequently, clean commonly touched surfaces and objects, cover your nose when you cough or sneeze, cover your mouth. And I know these are silly things to say, but as a health department, I just want to remind everyone of those details. And of course, we actually have a presentation next Tuesday on the rise in respiratory illnesses with Greater Bergen Community Action, which we'll be talking about more physical stuff. But I'm so glad that tonight we had Sue and Mason, talking about the mental health piece of it all, because Sue, I love what you said. Mental health is health. So thank you. And thank you, Mason, for joining us tonight.
Be well, everyone. Thank you.
Everybody,
Thank you.
thanks.
And then I think we could stop. It's funny, I can't, oh, there it is. I'm like, stop and share. Oh, and I think, oh, everyone left. Do you think other workplaces should start? This was Maureen Colombo. I wonder if there's a way, if she calls us. Do you think other workplaces should start support groups? I work in a school and it's been so hard for teachers, but she unfortunately logged out.
Oh, yeah, it would be wonderful. I
Yeah.
think that would be helpful, but there's so I think so many people in school systems are so overwhelmed as it is, right? But would be great. Connection, like I said, connection, support. I think it just helps so much,
Yeah.
I think of the people in our support group. They're doing so well,
Yeah. I wish she didn't log out, but maybe she'll call.
Well, if she wants to email me, I'm happy to speak with her, or
Yeah.
anybody. Thanks
Well,
for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much, Danielle.
So much for taking the time. Seriously, like, I
course.
loved your honesty of it all. It was just really refreshing.
Aw.
So thank you both. I hope you have a great night.
You
and,
too, Danielle. Please take care of yourself. I look forward to talking to you soon.
Yes, definitely.
Thanks, Sue.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Guys.
I'm gonna stop. Oh, thanks, Dylan.
You have to give me permission so I can stop the video.
Okay, so I right click you and make you host.
No, I just
or-
asked you. I am the host now. I'm good.
Oh, okay. Sweet.
Bam.
Excited for